This is the Invite Health Podcast, and I am Amanda Williams. Today's episode, I am going to be discussing what you need to know about Resveratrol, the coined anti-aging supplement that really gained momentum when it came to clinical research and scientific research back in the 1990s. It was originally discovered back in 1939. This is when they first came across this really unique component that they found in different food sources, and including things such as wine. This is where most people correlate resveratrol with. But when it comes down to what it's actually doing in the human body, this is where the science is absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to tell you all about that today. But before we get started, I always like to remind people to subscribe to the Invite Health Podcast, leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. All of the information on today's episode will be linked in the episode description, and you can visit invitehealth.com/podcast for more information. So let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about resveratrol. And what in the world is resveratrol? So resveratrol is this naturally occurring stilbene, or it's a polyphenol. It's a plant-based antioxidant, and it has all of these health-promoting benefits to it. Now, most people correlate resveratrol when they think of red wine, and that's not a bad assumption to make, because we know that one of the primary sources of resveratrol comes from grapes. But you can also find resveratrol in things like apples, blueberries, plums. You can also find the resveratrol in things like pistachios and peanuts. So there's a wide range of areas in terms of dietary intake where we can come across resveratrol. Now, one interesting aspect of resveratrol where a lot of the primary focus came from was looking at Japanese knotweed. Now, what Japanese knotweed is this really powerful plant, and it is the roots and the stalks of that Japanese knotweed that seems to be able to harbor all of this wonderful trans resveratrol that has been looked at as giving all of these human health benefits. So it was in the 1990s when it was the presence of resveratrol found in red wine that the scientific community really started to explore how it was impacting human health. And this kind of came about with the French paradox, where they were looking at coronary heart disease in people from France and comparing that heart risk to people in the United States. And the only differentiation that they could make was dietary wise. So they were finding that in the French culture, that foods containing higher amounts of resveratrol were consumed on a much more regular basis than found here in the United States, where people are following a standard American diet. So they call this the French paradox. And basically, after dubbing this the French paradox, researchers really started to delve into this and say, well, how is it giving this cardioprotective benefit? What exactly is it about the resveratrol that seems to potentiate all of these wonderful effects? And you even have researchers at Harvard University and people in the biotech industry that have been working really hard trying to figure out how to make synthetic resveratrol. They've been falling short on that, but when you take things from nature and then you try to tweak them a little bit, sometimes that's not a good idea. Taking things directly from nature, from things like the Japanese knotweed, or from grapes, or from plums, or from pistachios, you're getting that true nutrient. You're getting that true chemical constituent. So the science of aging has focused a lot on sirtuins. And sirtuins are really quite interesting. It's this group of proteins that are believed to protect us at the cellular level against a lot of the diseases that are related to aging. So a lot of the scientific evidence has been demonstrating that resveratrol seems to be able to do something with this sirtuin protein. And there's a whole class of different sirtuins. So primarily the one that they focused in on was called SIRT1, or sirtuin 1. What they found is that resveratrol has this really remarkable ability to activate and promote sirtuin activity. So what does that basically mean for us? Well, it means that virtually all of our cells, when exposed to trans resveratrol, have this real finite ability to promote the repair and the longevity of our cells. So that in and of itself is why so many people got on board with resveratrol being this powerful anti-aging supplement. But in the science world, we don't ever like to leave things as just, well, it's good for your cells. They want to know specifically what it is that the resveratrol is doing. And since I am a fanatic when it comes to inflammation, which is accelerated aging because of chronic inflammation, for me, this area of research is really remarkable. And when you look at the amount of research studies that are out there and published, we're looking at over 12,000 different research studies looking at the impact of resveratrol at a cellular level in the body. So I'm going to tell you about some of the findings from these really key research studies. But what we'll do first, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you about some science on resveratrol. We'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by InviteHealth.com. For over 20 years, Invite Health has provided premium quality supplements and expert advice you can trust. Now, first-time customers can enjoy an exclusive offer. Visit invitehealth.com/podcast or click the link in this episode description. That's invitehealth.com/podcast for your exclusive offer on Invite Health products. Invite Health offers the resources you need to make important decisions about your health. Chat live with degreed healthcare professionals, get product information, and find retail locations near you at invitehealth.com. You can also learn about our new genetic testing program and our exclusive Invite Fitness Wellness program. Follow Invite Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast today. Now back to our episode.
And welcome back. Let's talk about resveratrol. Let's talk about the science behind resveratrol. There's so much research out there. There was an interesting publication that came out in the Nature Research Journal, their precision oncology division of that journal, looking at all of the therapeutic potential effects of resveratrol. And they were reviewing a whole slew of different clinical trials and talking about how resveratrol had this impact on different types of cancers as well as other aspects in the body, looking at how it was working as this activator of SIRT1. And SIRT1, remember, this is the sirtuin 1. That's that family of proteins, and this deals with how the body is affected by metabolism, stress, the cell survival, all of these different things. And we know that resveratrol has this finite ability to actually activate that SIRT1. So right there's our anti-aging aspect, but there's certainly a lot more to it. So they started to assess more at a deeper level in the human body what it was that resveratrol was doing when they were thinking about the cardiovascular benefits, for example. And one area in particular that they looked at was NF-kappa beta. So NF-kappa beta stands for nuclear factor kappa beta. And this is a signaling pathway in the body that regulates inflammation. It regulates the immune response to infection, for example. And if we have an overabundance of NF-kappa beta, this can drive up more chronic systemic inflammation, which is not a good thing, especially when we're thinking about the cardiovascular system. The American Journal of Cardiology back in 2012, they published a report on the findings of a 1-year study where they were giving people resveratrol supplementation. Well, they were looking at markers for inflammation in patients who had cardiovascular disease. And they wanted to see, would this, wonder thing from nature, this resveratrol, would this actually do anything? So they aimed to investigate the effects of dietary rich resveratrol supplementation on inflammatory and fibrinolytic status. So fibrinolytic, that's when we're thinking about the stickiness, for example, of the blood. That's just a very simple way to kind of think about that. We don't want to have too much fibrin because then we have a higher tendency or a greater risk for throwing a clot. So I'm not going to get into the details, the nitty-gritty of pathophysiology for you, but that's just kind of a broad overview of what fibrin does. You can actually assess this in your blood by looking at your fibrinogen level. And so if you have elevated fibrinogen, we know that we need to make some corrections to make sure that we don't have this sticky or over thickening of the blood itself. So in this study, they had a group that was given a placebo, and then they had the group that was taking this resveratrol-rich supplement extract. And after 1 year, what they found was markers for inflammation, including things like C-reactive protein. High sensitivity C-reactive protein is looking for systemic inflammation. They found that that level had dropped by 26%. They found that another marker for inflammation known as TNF-alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha, dropped by 20%. These are things that you cannot make up, because the only difference between these two groups is one group was given the placebo and the other group is given resveratrol. And in that 1 year, they showed for the first time that dietary intervention with resveratrol could complement the gold standard therapy in the primary prevention of cardiovascular disease. And that was published in the American Journal of Cardiology. There's so much research out there showing the impact of resveratrol on blood pressure, for example. The Journal of Clinical Nutrition looked at the effect of resveratrol on blood pressure. They actually did a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. So they looked at different clinical trials that utilized resveratrol in the setting of people who had hypertension or high blood pressure. And through this meta-analysis, so they were looking at 6 different studies, they found that resveratrol supplementation had an impact on blood pressure. It said it significantly reduced systolic blood pressure in particular, and that's the top number. When you think about your blood pressure, you have the systolic and the diastolic. The systolic is your top number. So understanding all of these different factors and recognizing that resveratrol, this wonderful thing that comes from different food sources, comes from the Japanese knotweed plant, how this is actually working in terms of these different inflammatory pathways is really quite impressive. So understanding how it's working to target NF-kappa beta and tumor necrosis factor alpha, how it can help to enhance nitric oxide production in the body. Remember, if we have adequate nitric oxide, our blood vessels should be dilated to where they should be. So we're getting better blood flow through those vessels. And that in and of itself, also very impressive. But there's even more research on resveratrol that I want to share with you when it comes to inflammaging. And remember, if we can target the inflammation, we can target that aging process. I'm going to tell you more about that after this break.
This podcast is brought to you by InviteHealth.com. For over 20 years, Invite Health has provided premium quality supplements and expert advice you can trust. Now, first-time customers can enjoy an exclusive offer. Visit invitehealth.com/podcast or click the link in this episode description. That's invitehealth.com/podcast for your exclusive offer on Invite Health products. Invite Health offers the resources you need to make important decisions about your health. Chat live with degreed healthcare professionals, get product information, and find retail locations near you at invitehealth.com. You can also learn about our new genetic testing program and our exclusive Invite Fitness Wellness program. Follow Invite Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast today. Now back to our episode.
And welcome back. Now we're talking resveratrol. This has been coined the anti-aging supplement. Well, there's reasons why. We know it activates that key protein that family of proteins, the sirtuin 1 in particular. We know it's targeting all these different inflammatory pathways in the body, including COX-1 and COX-2. Now, you may not know what COX-1 and COX-2 are, but that's your cyclooxygenase pathways 1 and 2. Well, when you think about your over-the-counter NSAIDs, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, that's what they're targeting, primarily COX-1. COX-2, on the other hand, that's oftentimes targeted by things like Celebrex, which is a prescription. Now, understanding that the resveratrol has been shown, this powerful polyphenol, this plant-based antioxidant, has been shown to have all of these wonderful properties, including targeting and inhibiting enzymes in that cyclooxygenase 1 and 2 pathway, responsible for kicking out all these different inflammatory cytokines, which drive up inflammation. That, to me, is just another way to deal with the aging process. Oftentimes, we kind of just accept things as we get older. We say, oh, well, that's just part of aging. Well, if you can take something such as resveratrol, the trans resveratrol in particular, that can lead you down a path of targeting inflammation and supporting cellular longevity, then I think that that's quite a novel thing to do. You can look at different systems in the body and the way that resveratrol has been studied. The Journal of Neuroscience, back in 2014, they published their findings. This was a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial showing the benefits of resveratrol when it came to enhancing memory and glucose metabolism. In this particular study, they were looking at things like hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker for your long-term glucose control. And they found that in just 26 weeks of supplementing with resveratrol, this improved memory performance and functional connectivity in the hippocampus of the brain. So it was helping to support blood glucose. It was helping when it came to short-term memory, when it came to focus, attention. But yet we still sometimes overlook how it is that something from nature can do so much. And it's not like it hasn't been researched. Like I said, you can find over 12,000 different research studies with resveratrol. Now, here's a really interesting bit of information. I love to tell people about this study, and I wish more people knew about it. You can turn on your news any night of the week, and you're never going to hear about this. But I think it's something that once you hear this, you should think to yourself, why doesn't my doctor talk about things like this? Why is my doctor aware of things like this? So Louisiana State University, so LSU, they did a study, and they found that antioxidant compounds that are found in red wine are advancing the treatment of heart disease, the leading cause of death in both men and women in the United States. Researchers at LSU, Louisiana State University, have developed a drug-eluting stent with red wine antioxidants. So we have to think about that for a minute. So what exactly are they doing there at LSU? They basically designed this brand new stent. Everyone's heard about people having to have a stent put in to the heart to open things up. They've developed a stent that releases resveratrol slowly over time that promotes healing by preventing blood clotting and inflammation. That is absolutely phenomenal. And they also have some quercetin in this too. So remember, I've talked about quercetin as being this powerful bioflavonoid. So the two antioxidants together, so you have resveratrol and quercetin. And they said, if we give these stents that are saturated in this resveratrol and quercetin during conventional angioplasty, it may be possible to prevent excess tissue from building up and the blood vessel from narrowing again as it heals. This is one of the side effects when people get the stents put in. And they're saying, hey, if we just basically drench these stents in resveratrol, voila, we're not dealing with these post-op side effects. I think it's just such a fabulous bit of research that they're looking and they're saying, wow, it's targeting all these different inflammatory pathways. It's powerful antioxidant, fending off oxidative stress and damage. It's helping to support cellular longevity. Yeah, we should be using this. We know that when they give resveratrol to people who have diabetes, how people respond to that. In 2017, the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism showed an association between supplementing with resveratrol and improved management of type 2 diabetes. They were looking at levels for glucose, insulin levels. And they concluded that resveratrol supplementation was associated with significantly reduced insulin levels and insulin resistance. The fasting plasma glucose level was reduced among those who were given resveratrol compared to placebo groups. That's impressive stuff. So I want to tell you a little bit more about some more science on resveratrol, but we're going to take a quick little break and then we'll be back with more science.
This podcast is brought to you by InviteHealth.com. For over 20 years, Invite Health has provided premium quality supplements and expert advice you can trust. Now, first-time customers can enjoy an exclusive offer. Visit InviteHealth.com/podcast or click the link in this episode description. That's InviteHealth.com/podcast for your exclusive offer on Invite Health products. Invite Health offers the resources you need to make important decisions about your health. Chat live with degreed healthcare professionals, get product information, and find retail locations near you at invitehealth.com. You can also learn about our new genetic testing program and our exclusive Invite Fitness Wellness program. Follow Invite Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast today. Now back to our episode.
And welcome back. Let's talk a little bit more about resveratrol. So we know resveratrol is this supplement or a nutraceutical that has all of these different therapeutic effects based off of what we know on the science. So I'm going to go back to this study, this report that came out of the Nature Research Journal, their precision oncology division of this, where they were talking about all the different therapeutic potentials and saying, when they started to look into all of the clinical data available, that they were looking at these different clinical trials on resveratrol that focused in on things like cancer, neurological disorders, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That is a major issue in this country, and it's food-induced because of the standard American diet. And what they were looking at was the amount of pathways. This is what really set them apart. They said, wow, it's not just that activation of sirtuin, the SIRT1. We also recognize that how it's affecting NF-kappa beta signaling pathway, that regulator for inflammation, and recognizing how it was dealing with different activations of the P53 pathway, understanding how it could do all of these different things. Expression of what's known as VCAM, which is vascular cell adhesion molecules. And we know that when we look at VCAM, if we have too much VCAM, too much activation of VCAM, this is responsible for the underlying reasons for atherosclerosis and high blood pressure. So they're able to narrow all of these different things down and really assess how it is that the resveratrol had these wonderful means in the human body to do so much when it comes to optimizing human health over the long term. And remember, this all started when they started to focus in on France and said, what is it in the French culture and their dietary habits that seems to lead them to a lower incidence of coronary heart disease? And then seeing all of the other components, how it's working with different aspects of inflammation, how it's regulating things such as blood glucose and insulin response. When you start to look at all of these things and you say, I can take this as a supplement, and it's far surpasses what we originally thought about resveratrol as being this powerful anti-aging supplement. I can take this, and maybe if I'm dealing with elevated liver enzymes, this may help with that. Well, based off of all of these different human clinical trials, that is what we are showing. We're seeing the beneficial effects of resveratrol when it comes to heart disease. They've seen the beneficial effects of resveratrol in breast cancer. And they go into details in this particular study in the Nature Journal, Precision Oncology report, talking about how it can be beneficial for bone health because of the antioxidant properties within resveratrol, looking at its benefits in terms of pancreatic function, as I mentioned, with insulin and glucose metabolism, realizing how powerful resveratrol can be when it comes to kidney health, when it comes to brain health. So we know all of these different aspects. There's even more that you can look at resveratrol for. They have looked at resveratrol in the setting of inflammatory bowel disease and how if you can downregulate those inflammatory cytokines and NF-kappa beta, that it allows the body's natural immune system to do what it is supposed to do when it comes to healing and repair. So really some impressive research out there. I plan to do many more episodes talking about resveratrol when it comes to certain health topics. Resveratrol's impact on brain health, resveratrol's impact on liver health, for example. So be sure that in the future you tune in and you listen to our latest episode so you can catch any updates on research on resveratrol. So I want to thank you for tuning in today for the Invite Health podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Make sure that you subscribe, leave us a message, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health, and we will see you next time for another episode of Invite Health Podcast.